3-2-1.
3-2-1. We didn't say 3-2-1.
forgot
He didn't say 3-2-1, so we have no idea if we're on or not.
3-2-1.
3-2-1. So we're on, John.
Okay.
We're on.
Turn your
What
phones
are we
off.
gonna do? Yeah, John, turn your.
Oh.
Welcome to Rock Paper Hand Grenades. I am Gary Hopper from the big city of Wea, and this is Representative, or the Honorable John Heichel from Goofystown. And tonight, our guest is Frank Sapareto from Derry, right? You're from Derry.
Yes.
Representative from Derry, former senator and troublemaker at large.
Extraordinaire.
Extraordinaire.
Well, thank you for that intro.
At large sounds good.
At large.
Yeah.
Well, all of the representatives in Derry are elected at large.
We're all at large.
We're all, yeah. Especially as
We're
you
trying to get a
older.
little smaller, but
So you were saying, you were talking about national propaganda radio before. Okay, listen.
yes. You know, I used to.
Wait, I got to tell you a story.
Go ahead.
My son, my favorite son, was, I think, about 13 years old, and he was having a political discussion in high school. Maybe he was probably 15 or something. Political discussion in high school, and he was referring to national propaganda radio, right?
NPR.
And NPR. He did not know until he was corrected in class, and he comes home, he's mad at me. He said, I thought that's what it was called. I said, well, that's what I call
Well, it'd be
it.
more accurate today, of course.
It was pretty accurate back then. It's been
Well,
so left.
I used to defend them. You know, I used to listen to it every morning, and I was a fan of Lauren Canoy's show and listen to the news now. Only now, when I listen to it, I could take about 10 minutes of it before the fake news just overwhelms me. I can't get over it.
It's
So I got to go to my tweets to find out what really happened.
Right, yeah, because it's all anti-Trump all the time.
Completely. And then, but what gets me is that during their fund drive, they have the actual gall to say that they have neutral reporting,
they're
and that's why
unbiased.
you should contribute to it, because it's such neutral reporting. You know, I hope the public isn't that dumb. You know, I really do.
No, I got really aggravated with them years ago. I went in 2009 to the Tea Party rally, okay? And I've been to big events down in D.C. The Tea Party rally had at least 500,000 people.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm on my way back from that. I'm wicked tired because I didn't really sleep when I was down there, and I couldn't really afford to rent a hotel room, so I had to basically drive on a Friday night.
I drank a lot of tea.
A lot of coffee. A few gallons of coffee. I'm on the way back, and I'm going through Rhode Island, and I listen to national propaganda radio, and they say tens of thousands of people showed up to protest against Obama. So they misrepresented what we were doing, because they were trying to make it all racist.
Yep.
So it was against Obama, which it really wasn't.
Yep.
It was as much against Obama as it was against Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid. You know what I mean? Because it was the Democrats as a group that were pushing all this crap on us.
Well, you got to be politically correct.
Yeah, so they did their best to make it about racism and anti-Obama, which it wasn't. In fact, there were actually black people protesting with us. And one thing that I loved about it was, and you'll appreciate this as a politician, is that, you know how like on most political things like that, it's paid for by somebody, and you can tell because there's, most of the people carrying signs are holding the same signs, manufactured by the same company, manufactured six weeks in advance.
Yep, like the cookie cutter response we get sometimes for on bills in the
Exactly,
State
the
House.
same thing.
Right, please vote for this.
Please
Right,
vote
with the
against
same
this or
card,
for the
same
same
logo.
card, everything else. Well, anyway, when I went down to that rally in 2009, there was one sign that I saw a few times, but that was it. Most of all of the signs were handmade, and some of them were very creative. And like I said, 500,000 people. They say tens of thousands.
Yep.
They spent more time talking about Sabrina Williams' tennis match in that time period.
Yep.
Like 2 or 3 times as much time talking about a tennis match than they did about the Tea Party rally. So they played it down and played down the numbers. Instead of, it was hundreds of thousands of people showed up, not tens of thousands. It is I don't know. Like you say, every time they say we're unbiased, I just want to throw something at the cotton picking radio.
It is, and I really have to go onto my phone and look up the Twitter and find out what really happened today. You know, for example, like the new FBI, they knew a nominee for the FBI director the president made too. He did it by tweets. What is wrong with that?
Right.
You know, I'd rather it came by a tweet because now I know for sure who it is.
Right.
Because I'm not going to trust ABC News or MSNBC to tell me who it is because they've always got to interject their comments. Usually, you know, when they exaggerate things and they're off, they never say the unconfirmed report or the extended. They never say, but they always say that about anything to do with President Trump.
Right.
So you just can't get the story straight from them. You know, you have to put it together by different
They're
sources.
so biased. They're so. I can't even. I mean, I can't even watch it anymore. I mean, you watch it for 10 or 15 minutes, and you go, "Geez, I mean, how much of this crap can you really listen to?" I mean, it makes no sense. It's not true.
Yep.
I know it's not true.
Yep.
And they're spinning everything to make it look so people will.
Well, I know. I remember
believe it.
racism was. I think racism was dead up here, particularly in the northern part of the country, until Obama was president. Now, all of a sudden, we've got race issues. I feel like I'm back in the '60s again. You know, or even the '50s when it comes to McCarthyism. You know, all these people are reliving the same issue of Joe McCarthyism again. Only now it's the Democrats. It's just.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was listening to Chuck Schumer.
Yep.
Now, if the tables were turned and this was a Republican U.S. senator saying this about Obama, just imagine what would have happened. Chuck Schumer said, in effect, just because we haven't found any connection between Russia and Trump, it doesn't necessitate that there isn't one.
Right.
That is such
won't let it go.
That's the definition of a witch hunt.
Right.
That's how you
There's
define a
nothing
witch
else
hunt.
to talk about, and
Yeah.
they just keep bringing up
Yeah.
something that isn't even there. They're looking for ghosts.
Similar
Yes, but-
comments were made during the Joe McCarthy era.
Right,
It was
right.
the same thing.
But that
thing.
one comment, if somebody had said that about Obama, that there were, I don't know, ties to Islam,
Yep.
you know, if a Republican had said, well, there's ties Obama has to Islam, and they said, well, would you have proof? Says, no, we don't have any, but that doesn't mean they're not there. They would have
Oh, of
ripped him.
course.
They would have ripped him apart
Of
because
course they
you can't disprove a negative.
Right.
You can't disprove that. That's
right.
When did you stop beating your wife? Type of
That's right.
question. It's
Well, you'll be
It's so
happy
easy.
to know that I have some legislation that I know you'll be interested in. That I'll be
Uh-oh.
filing coming up this fall. I've actually contacted actor Richard Dreyfuss, who's heading the Dreyfuss Institute, and are promoting this. You would think that it would be something in a liberal in the left wing, but it's actually not. Actually, it was from when he did a Fox News show. He's promoting learning and understanding of the Constitution. Now, I find
Really?
when I quiz, absolutely, he's got now he's there. They've got a whole foundation now that's pushing for it. I've contacted them to help us see if we can get some star power to pass this. The bill I plan on introducing will require students to show proficiency in understanding the United States Constitution prior to graduating high school.
Why don't you include legislators in that bill too?
I would love to. I'm hoping that they are going to get an education as we go through as we go through this bill.
I like that.
But
Let
what I'm
everyone
going
know that there's
they
this in the
learn
Hampshire
it
Constitution.
absolutely. There's one in New Hampshire as well, and we're getting them in the earlier grades. But by the time they get to high school, they've forgotten about it. When I ran into a group of kids that feel that there's a constitutional right for them not to be offended or insulted, we get a problem because that's just the opposite of what it says. The First Amendment guarantees the right for free opinion and free speech, even if it's not what they agree with.
there's
But however,
people that think they have a constitutional right to health care.
That's true too. So that's why I think that obviously there's a disconnect between when I grew up in my schools, we were required to learn the Constitution in graduating high school. We seem to have gotten away from that. You may recall back about 15 years ago, Gary introduced a bill in the schools that they weren't doing Pledge of Allegiance in the schools. So I put a bill in that says that every school must provide the opportunity for a child to say Pledge of Allegiance if they want to. And if not, they should stand. And of course, you may remember the ACLU fought me on that.
Yep.
But we had some great members of the House back in the years that we served that were World War II veterans who had been there. And every co-sponsor on that bill was a veteran of a major battle in the Pacific War. And particularly Alf Jacobson when he got up and saved that bill when it was killed twice in committee.
Alf did?
Alf Jacobson got up
He was
there,
a wicked
and I'd
liberal.
like to, but however, Alf understood our Constitution, and Alf was on the second wave of fight as they went ashore on Okinawan.
Right.
And when he got up and he spoke, and I got goosebumps thinking about when he got up and spoke, because the bill was dead, and he got on the floor and he said, you know, the ACLU had just argued that we don't pledge allegiance to the flag, we do it to the Constitution. And when Alf got up there and he says, as my friends were dying around me and as I was wearing them, I looked up and I watched the flag raise over Mount Suribachi. And as I did that, that was what we pledged our allegiance to. They've forgotten what that meaning was. I get goosebumps thinking about what he said, but he saved that bill. And every one of those veterans from that bill now, unfortunately, is dead. But that bill is now law, and the schools must provide the opportunity to say that. Now, the ACLU said that you shouldn't have to stand. The government can't make you stand. And I can think of a time when if you don't stand for the government, you go to jail.
Exactly.
So if they were going to sue, they would have to sue, and the judge would have to rule that you could stand for him, but not the symbol of our country, which is ridiculous.
Right.
So that was why that bill has been put in as now law. Now I think the next part of that now is that we should carry that one step further and make sure that this generation growing up knows what our Constitution says.
Isn't that a requirement for citizenship?
I believe it is.
So if we are taking children, they're now at the age where they're going to be able to vote.
Mm-hmm.
They are becoming true citizens
Yes.
of the United States of America, because prior to that, they don't have really any rights. So now
Correct,
you're giving
correct.
them their rights, so they should understand the responsibilities that go with it at the same time.
Absolutely.
I like that idea.
Absolutely. And a good example of that is look at the crowd over at Berkeley, prohibiting free speech, that no one has the right to oppose their particular views. And it's happening across campuses across the country right now. It's because they really do not understand that First Amendment right. And when schools have it, for example, in my school at Pinkerton, high schools, there's a sign by the doors as you leave in the rooms, and it says, attention, you've been bullied if you've been a number of things, and one of those things are insulted. Now, and they're going to prosecute as a Class A misdemeanor that you've been bullied because you've been insulted. We really have a serious. Even our learning institutions are unaware of what the First Amendment means. And they assure me that their attorneys say that they're in compliance with the law. That's why they need an education as well. It needs to be taught in the schools. As you mentioned, the legislature itself could use a lesson in the Constitution.
That should be a mandatory. I think that should be a mandatory before on Legislators' Day or
Sure.
Organization Day.
Well, since
They
you
should at least be told that there is a New Hampshire Constitution.
It is.
Because I would bet more than half the legislators don't know that there is.
Well, John, since you've left the legislature, we've been in a process really of dumbing down the legislature. We used to have very informative things like Legislative Firearms Day, where you'd have a chance to learn about firearms. Now, since they can't have that anymore, the legislature's voting on firearms issues blind. Really, they don't know anything about them. The Legislative Ski Day, things that are along the facilities in the state. We don't go to tour the state facilities. We have no idea what many of them are. But that seems to be the process for it. We're penny wise.
Well,
They just need your vote. They need you to show up. They need you to vote, go through the motion, and that's it. They just
do what
they
you're
just need
told
to-
and move on.
That's right.
I actually, of all
Well, you guys never
They're
did what
doing
you're
it in
told.
school, too.
Just so our readers can hear, the two hosts that are running this are
Yeah,
probably
I
two of the
didn't-
better
nobody told me.
legislators that we've ever had. They think independently and they vote their conscience and they do the right thing.
well,
I just want to
say
get
the right thing. but
Every
I
time.
think you guys, I've never seen you have an issue of conscience before. You've done the right thing. You've
I don't
had
have a
issues.
conscience. That's how I get away with it. No, so I'll tell you one thing that's bothered me. As you know, we get like $100 a year. One of the things since I first got elected in 2000, I really loved was that when I first got up there, they had shooting day. Go New Hampshire would set up a legislative
Yep.
shooting day. That didn't mean you get to shoot at legislators. That meant that legislators got to shoot. And they had access to the state ski areas.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So on the state ski one, about once or twice a day, I'd take my grandkids up to the top of Cannon on the
Yep.
tram
Yep.
and walk around the top. And it was kind of nice because, as a legislator, you don't get any money. But that was something free that I could do with
Sure.
them and, bring a picnic or something like that.
Yep.
So
Well-
somebody complained because I think it was a Democrat was up there who lived near it
Yep.
and was taking advantage of it all the time.
Yep.
It's like, so what? They're only getting $100 a year. Let it go.
Yep.
But they complained because it was over the
$25 limit at the time,
limit.
which has changed now anyway. But I use a perfect example.
And that aggravated the heck out
Well,
of me.
that place that you were at, when you were up there, Gary, was the liquor license. And what happens when they expanded a few years back, the last year that we had legislative, that we were allowed to ski, the base lodge expanded their liquor area. So as a result, they lost their license at the summit. Now, had we not had legislative ski day up there hearing what was happening from that vendor up top there, they would have lost their entire business up the top there. When we found out about that had done that, we contacted DMV and the Bureau of Alcohol and got a way to keep their license and things so that they could stay in business and still serve and stay open up top.
Right.
But had that not happened, they would have closed because there would have been we would have been completely unaware of that situation. Right. So there are things that come out of us being involved in these things where we can see.
Because Cannon's a state-owned.
Because and exactly, and as you know, back when we served back 20-something years ago, we leased the Sunapee area back that we used to own for 99 years. So in our lifetime, we'll never see that back.
Right.
But the firearms day, my education about firearms came pretty much from all of that. I do Revolutionary War reenactments with Representative Welch as a result of that.
Oh, really?
And I learned all about black powder and cannons and guns, and we still fire them. And but all of my knowledge about automatic weapons and modern weaponry and the power, all of them, the things that we vote on. A lot of that come from that, so that we're informed. Unfortunately, the new legislators coming in who don't have a firearms background will be in the dark on those things.
Right.
Yeah, I know. That used to be one of the highlights of my year, was going with Go New Hampshire, going up there and shooting different guns. I remember Bob Mead got a picture of me shooting a M1 Garand. I never shot an M1 Garand.
Oh, that'll put a bruise in your shoulder if you don't have it tight.
It was
It's got a kick to it, doesn't it?
it was
Not a
fun.
30 caliber.
It's
right?
a 30-06.
Yeah, there's
Well, 30-06.
yeah, it's got,
World War II.
Yeah, and it's got the question. The clip is when you catch your thumb when you're pushing the clip in all the time to catch it.
Yeah, because you have to. Yeah, instead of like a clip that goes underneath, there's a.
It pops in on a
magazine,
spring.
rather.
Yeah.
There's a clip that's basically a spring that holds 8 rounds, and you push it down with your
your
thumb.
thumb.
And if you don't hold the
If you
bolt,
get your thumb back in that bolt, you're going to feel it. I had some nice sized bruises on the right shoulder from that too. But for example, I remember the Revolutionary War Brigade would come. They'd bring their cannon. They'd fire the cannon at Captain Morrow's brigade. So we started with that.
didn't Dave Welch he? I think it was Dave shot that thing off from right out in front of the State House.
Yes,
one
he did.
time.
Yes,
And
he did.
got, like boatloads of trouble because it
Well, that was
shook
recent.
windows.
Well, that was recent. Yeah, well, it's been known to
That was awesome.
break a few eggs up in Concord. I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, back to the media though. Yeah, you're right. It's insane. I posted a video, and I haven't double checked it. Somebody said it was not a legitimate video, but I don't, because it was Snopes said it wasn't. But Snopes is as corrupt as anything else.
yeah,
And it looked like a legitimate report of CNN staging a pro-Islam protest in London, England. And they're like
Yep.
collecting people around and putting them in the right place and hold this sign here and
well, I can see that when I was over there, all I did was hear about U.S. bashing, and it was coming from the U.S. media. All
really?
of it was, pretty much all of it was, yep. I mean, it's like going to New Jersey, New York. You can't get Fox News there. All you can get is MSNBC. So no wonder they vote the way they do, where they're exposed to. But over in Europe, it was all about America bashing at the time. And this is only a few years ago. And it was actually the U.S. media.
just bashing America.
Oh, yeah,
from
criticizing everywhere. So it's no wonder why they had the opinion they did of
England.
Americans.
I don't know if you guys saw this post. It was awesome quote today. Let's see if I can get it to it in a reasonable amount of time. Let's see.
Yes, you have to
know now.
So, the Prime Minister of Poland. Poland does not have any problem with terrorism.
Oh.
They don't let the immigrants in.
Yep.
Okay, they said no. Right? So the Prime Minister of Poland said, I think it was yesterday, talking to, it was after the terrorist attack in London.
Yep.
She says, "Where are you headed, Europe? Rise from your knees and from your lethargy, or you will be crying over your children every day." That's Prime Minister Sapareto.
Yeah. Well, we kind of forget about how
She's awesome. She's like Trump.
You know, we kind
Europe's in
of
trouble.
we
They're
kind of
wicked in trouble.
You know why? It's because they've lost their identity. We always talk about multiculturalism, but that's not it. It was the unity of this country that kept it together. In World War II, there wasn't diversity.
Right.
There wasn't. We were about America at that time, and the feeling of patriotism drew that greatest generation to go and enlist. You know what? An interesting thing. My 22-year-old son was talking to me the other day, and I've always instilled upon him the meaning of what that generation did, or what it was like to them to go to war, he says, Dad, he said, I don't think my friends, if they were called, now would sign up and enlist if the U.S. were attacked the way it was in the years. I don't think they could do that. They were that way, and it really got me worried. And most of this stuff about deunification, we're not unified. We're not together. We're apart. We're separating multiculturalism. Look at what happened in Canada right now. Quebec wants to secede mostly because their culture is different. The French culture in Quebec. Right. That's why they wanted to secede. We can't do that here in this country. We have a culture. We may have backgrounds where we may have came from, but we're all one culture. And as we try to get away from this and try to split this country apart, which the last presidential administration has done, is the problems that we're having right now. It's an example of what has happened by this diversity. It's not diversity. We should be unified.
Last time we were unified was 9/11.
Really, that was not exactly.
That's
that
the
was
last
it.
time this country was unified.
Right.
Where everybody pretty much felt the same way.
And now look at that. That's so
That's
many years
about
ago
it.
that those kids, now they're adults now. When they were kids, teenagers when that happened, now are integrated in society. But we've gotten away from that.
Unfortunately, we need a terrorist attack or some sort of an attack on our soil.
Right.
Killing 3,000 people or so.
Well, I'm just worried
For
about
us
by
to
the time
become
we have
unified. We should be unified all the time now.
when North Korea gets the capability of delivering an ICBM across and hit the mainland United States, you're probably going to see that.
They're unified. I mean, I argue with how they are unified, but they certainly are.
Yep.
Yeah, they are.
It's true. It's true. So, and unfortunately, we'll take a catastrophe like an ICBM or something
It'll
like
take
that.
a catastrophe,
North
right,
Korea, and I
where
think
a
the
million
most likely
people,
one right now
right.
is the
Little
little fat guy ready to
Don't
fire his
believe it
his
can't
bullets.
happen.
Yep.
No, I agree. That's a huge issue because I think you have MSNBC, CNN, National Propaganda Radio. They are deliberately dividing the country into groups, and they are. I mean, I think, like your son was saying, I think a lot of kids his age buy into it and believe, well, if we're attacked, it's our own fault.
Exactly. As if we're exactly.
Oh, yeah, we take the blame.
We got it
It's
coming.
our fault.
You know. I remember when I was in the Senate a few years back.
Yeah, we hear
we went
that all
to we went over to Pakistan, and we met with the diplomats, from Europe, and I was appalled that they feel that we owe them money. As we give them all kinds of money, and I suggested that with the U.S. cut back and supporting these charitable countries and so forth, and they were shocked. I mean, they were actually insulted that we would consider not paying them money. And I asked them why they feel that way, and the reason is because we have always given them money. This is Portugal, France, all these Germany. A number of the diplomats that were at the meeting there, they felt as though we owed them money, like we have to give them, because it's always been that way throughout their lifetime. We've done that.
They're our ally because we give them money, and if we didn't give them money,
pretty
we would
much
be somebody else's ally.
So when I hear President
They
Trump
might go to
say,
the highest
"Wait a
bidder."
minute, America first,
Yeah,
being
you never
ourselves,"
know.
of course.
Yeah, they may be
Of
our friends
course.
because we pay them. I don't know.
That's actually one
Sure
of the
feels
things.
that way sometimes.
That's actually one of the things Trump did that was awesome, and the news media spun it, right?
Oh, right, absolutely.
Because when he came back, what's the prime minister of Germany? I've forgotten her name.
Merkel.
Okay, was upset because basically Trump said, "Look, we're not paying for this anymore. If you guys want us involved in to defend Germany and Europe, you guys got to pay your share."
Absolutely.
Right? NATO.
They're supposed to pay 2% of their GDP, and they haven't.
They haven't forever.
They haven't at all. Same thing in the Paris Accords. We've done more for greenhouse gas
Right.
cut back in emissions than any other place.
Of course.
And Trump is absolutely right. The two major contributors, India and China, don't have to do anything. That's not an agreement.
That's
we
right.
shouldn't have been in the first place.
Right.
So criticize
We're
and
gonna get
criticism about
100%
this
of
is
that. We'll get it. We'll get the bill for whatever bill there is. We'll get it just like we pay the UN.
yeah.
It's the same
I
thing.
hope he doesn't pay it. Another thing, too, I'd like to see the Supreme Court write a check out to the sanctuary cities.
Yes.
Because I don't think the president should sign one.
Right.
You know,
Maybe
whoever
not get any
controls the
federal
purse
help.
strings.
Maybe not get any federal help.
No.
to
Well, we
sanctuary
did have our own
cities.
constitutional crisis here back in 1997 over the Claremont issue. And I remember at the time that when the court struck down the tax, you had the far right saying, well, the teachers will work for free, and you had the far left saying, well, that's okay, people will voluntarily pay their taxes, all of which is obviously
Right,
not true. But the thing is that the one branch had a negative on the other. So in this case right now, since the court is now making foreign policy and determining all the foreign policy where he has to check with a court in order to make a decision,
Right.
and that I think that the negative should be there. Withhold the funds. If they want to be a sanctuary city and they want to pay, give our money to illegal immigrants, give our tax dollars to do that, then fine. Let them do. Let the feds not send a check to those communities and give them the additional money.
Right.
Shouldn't happen.
I
Don't sign a
don't
check.
understand, I don't understand why we don't defund the Ninth Circuit.
Or actually reform that. I think that there has to be that Congress needs to unite and go after some
I
of the
think,
judges.
somebody told me, and I don't remember what the number is, but there's like, most of the decisions by the Ninth Circuit are overturned.
Well, they are more to overturn than any other circuit.
I don't know if it's most, but I think it was a lot.
They are more than all the other circuits in that too, according to what I'd seen. I'd seen that last year in the
Yeah.
report.
And so if they are that inconsistent with what the moderate Supreme Court says, maybe they got to either defund them or actually reorganize so that they don't exist.
Well, I found that
Because the legislature can do that. They can just reorganize the court and make sure the Ninth Circuit
Well,
is not.
Well, the Congress will have to do that in U.S. Senate. But we've had that same issues here, in our state. And I've always been defensive of the judiciary. But occasionally, in this case, they're becoming too active.
Right.
It should be up to the legislature if they want to pass gay marriage or things like that. That's creating something different. That's not in the court's purview. Foreign policy is not within the court's purview either.
Never has been.
It never has been. But what I'm finding is that third branch of government is always the grayest area. I never thought there was waste, for example, in New Hampshire government, until I started looking into the court system. That's really where there's an
I
awful
think
lot of
it's a fourth
expenditure and
branch of
waste.
government. I think the courts are a fourth branch of
Well,
government.
they try to be they're equal branches, but they're a little more equal than the
Well,
others.
they're a judicial branch, but I mean, I think they have formed this 3.5 kind of. They've expanded the jurisdiction of the judicial branch.
Well, they have, and we've actually spent quite a bit in the area of law enforcement.
They
Here's a
oppose the
question for both of you.
legislature.
How much, as a question for you, what do you think that the New Hampshire spends on all law enforcement, local, state, and county? What do you think we spend on corrections law enforcement across the board right now in this state annually?
Wow.
What would you say?
$3
Pick a
billion.
number. Well, remember, our state budget per year is only about $3 billion. We operate on our whole state on $3 billion
No,
a year.
6 billion.
About $6 million. But remember, back
Yeah,
15
five,
years ago, it was
yeah,
only
yeah.
5. Wasn't
Right,
very
okay.
much.
Okay, so
1.2.
Okay, we spend $1.3 billion a year on education. We're spending almost $1 billion a year. Now, we're spending almost $300 million at the local levels for law enforcement.
Right.
The county is spending in excess of $200 million, total of all the counties and corrections. And then the state right now is spending over 200 and something million as well. Now, that's not counting pensions and all the other things that we pay
Which
for
is
Group
way
2.
behind, which is
way
way
beyond.
over.
I know that our chief is going to retire on about a $200,000 a year pension as a public servant, and dwarf that. So we're pretty generous. We'll probably take a bond out to pay it. But I mean, those types of things right
Take
now.
a bond out to
To
pay for his
pay our chief
retirement?
retirement, that's right.
You realize how selfish that is?
We have gotten to the point now where we grant, and that's why I want to be on the Criminal Justice Committee, is because, after being on Ways and Means and hearing across I was right on the other side of the wall for me for 15 years, and hearing what's going on in the spending, it is unbelievable. It's unchecked, and it's hidden. It's very well hidden. For example, the courts themselves are designed to create money, bring money in that pays part of the operation of the court. So it's a self-sustaining business with unlimited customers. If they're too busy, they back off in the arrest. If they're not busy enough, I know my town, for example, has 2 full-time prosecutors, and they buy them 2 new cars every year.
Right.
I mean, it's gotten to the point where whatever they want, they just go to the committee, ask for it, and it's granted. And it was because they're all former law enforcement, so they're leaning that way. We've gotten a little more independent-minded where we're starting to look at things and saying, wait a minute, why do you need it for? We're starting to do that, but before it was always carte blanche. So as a result, for example, you and I, all of us, we're too stupid to charge somebody. We're not allowed to do that. Only the police can do that, because you and I are too dumb to know if we've been aggrieved. That's not right.
Right.
Wait, charge somebody? What do
You
mean?
couldn't charge someone with a crime, only the police can do that.
Okay.
You can't go after someone, they have to do that. And other states don't operate that way, but we do, because we really are the most police state really in the country. We arrest and prosecute more people per capita than almost all other states. I mean, we're at the top of that. It's really a big business here.
Yeah. It is a big business.
Look in the papers when you see when you look at the paper and you see all the arrests and assaults. What you're going to see is particularly under the simple assault law, because only New Hampshire is the lowest threshold for that. All it takes is contact. You know how many assaults occur in Manchester on a daily basis, getting on and off the bus, running any type of contact at all is simple assault, and that's a 30-day jail, possible jail time. It's up to Class A misdemeanor with jail time. Right. I mean, we really go after people who come in contact with us. And now, of course, the way things are in my committee, we've passed 2 bills, for example, recently. Tell me if you'd vote for a bill that says that you can charge someone with a serious felony crime even if all the evidence says that they didn't do it. Does that make sense to you?
No.
House Bill 106 says that you can be charged with a sexual assault. All it takes is for anyone to accuse you of it. And if they believe, even though the evidence says you didn't, specifically in the bill says the evidence says you didn't do it, or the evidence does not corroborate, there's no evidence whatsoever, if there isn't any at all, you are still charged with that.
Right.
Can you imagine that we would do that? Look at our founding fathers said that
imagine.
I'd rather let 10 people, and the founding
I'd
10,
rather let 10 people
go free than incarcerate one innocent person. That we've taken that complete opposite right now, and the reason for it is because, if it's a sexual assault, we got to get those bad men. We don't care. It's a bad enough crime.
Right.
Never mind if we have the right person or not. We're just going to throw the book at whoever we want to accuse.
Yeah,
So
we just did that yesterday. There was a signing of, I forget what Senate bill was, about the, it went through my committee.
SB 133?
Was it, yeah, it was it was a bill, it had 2 parts. One of the parts was that if somebody was at a lower court, it was like a sexual abuse or whatever, that evidence, the
past previous history. That was
previous history was
that was from the case, the Seth Maglia case over the UNH. Right. Their previous sexual history can't be used.
If that judge has said that's not admissible because it's not relevant, it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, well, it was protected at the lower court, but there's no ruling to say that information is protected at the higher court.
Right.
So they let it go,
Right.
which was inappropriate.
Right.
That was the first half of the bill, and the Judiciary Committee passed easily. Because that bill came to us through the House and the Senate, one of those deals. And the House one went through, we took out the second half and passed that part, because that was legitimate. The other one was basically that any communications you had, that person had, the victim theoretically, had prior to the sexual assault or murder in this case, was not admissible.
Right.
Well, that's not.
No, it should be in a case.
justice.
It should be in a case by case. Exactly.
basis.
Exactly, because the circumstances around something can be construed so that they can be critical in determining the innocence or the guilt of somebody. But we don't. But you got to understand right now. I'm actually starting to feel there is a war on men going on right now. It really is. I hate to say this, but that's really what I'm seeing: a war on men. In other words, the only time we ever pass these types of laws only apply to the sexual assault statutes and things that are designed to go after those that are 90% male dominated.
Right.
And it's always that way. I mean, I'd like to say that I'm making it up, but I'm not. It is. All of these things are only in those cases where sexual assault or when it's something involving gender issue. The status of victimhood has now become the prime status of what we do. Whoever the victim is, that's who we're gonna make sure that we're gonna go after whoever we can.
Strong arm of the law and the power of the state to protect those poor people.
Who we claim would be the victims.
Who
Look
claim
at
to be
a perfect example, Kathy Griffin. Oh, she's such a victim now.
Right.
What a shame. She really didn't do anything. Never mind the bloody head holding up. We can forget about that. She's just a poor victim.
Right.
Those type of things.
And she's still employed.
It's
you imagine-
because she's applied for victimhood status, and she's getting sympathy in that regard. Once you're a victim, you are now elevated. You are above the law.
Can you imagine if what was Tonight Show? Jay
Leno?
Jay Leno. Jay Leno holds up the severed head of Obama. What would have happened to him?
That would have been his last show.
That would have been his last show.
Well, if anybody does.
And he probably would have been charged for something.
Sure.
Oh, God.
In the
yes.
FBI. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. We've.
Right.
There was just no way that's even okay. I mean, it's free speech. I totally agree that that's free speech and should be able to do it.
Is free
But
speech
how the
running
heck-
into a crowded subway and yelling Allah Akbar at the top of your lungs? Is that a good idea
No,
too?
that's different. But I believe what she did was free speech and fully protected.
And I agree, yeah.
But she should be fired immediately.
Right, right.
You know, it's insane.
Well, as you know, since you've left actually, John, in the legislature, we go after representatives for things they may have said 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
Since now we've already started that with the last presidential election.
Right.
So here we go. So now you and I are going to have a hot mic moment. And I'll bet you this conversation we're having now may pop up 15 to 20 years from now when it's politically incorrect even more at the time. And they'll bring this
talk
up
about things that
because
are
it's a hot
politically
mic
incorrect.
moment. And of course, they'll use that to hit you over the head with. You know, during this entire trial of the two representatives within the House right now,
Frost and the other guy.
yeah,
Fisher.
Fisher. You know, we might not agree with what they have to say, and it does not. And of course, you know, with 400 members, it's not. They're not speaking for the entire House. But however, you can defend their right to say it, and it's up to those voters and their constituents to determine if they want that opinion to represent them or not.
I disagree with you.
I explain why.
Okay. First of all, in the case of Fisher, I agree with you because that was 10 years ago. It was a crappy thing to say, and on the next election, the voters can decide to boot him out.
Sure,
right?
sure, absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
if I was running against him, I'd have all
It's a
those
kangaroo
quotes.
court.
Sure, I'd agree with you.
I
there
would have
for that.
all those quotes on a piece of cardboard paper and
Sure.
send it to all the voters. He's
Sure.
not getting back in.
Well, as you know, most likely they make stuff out that you say anyway, so I don't mind they did.
Yeah. Well, Fisher, Frost, on the other hand, I think is different because that was said this year about sitting senators,
Yep.
calling them effers and all this other stuff.
Yep.
And I think it's imperative that the House maintain a reasonable amount of decorum. Because if you can't, it's like I said on the show a couple weeks ago, I'm on the Judiciary Committee. We've got, pro-life bills or anti-life bills.
Yep.
With, all this other stuff.
Yep.
If people allow their emotion to get so riled up that they start calling other state reps effing this and effing that.
Yeah,
and
that's true. I missed that meeting where they were.
yeah, you have to say no. This is not okay. You have an obligation as a legislator to comport yourself in a certain way. You can say whatever you
Right.
want.
Now, that may be a reason for censure for behavior.
Right.
But not for an opinion things. He was going after, the other public representative was going after for his opinion,
Right.
for something he had said years ago.
Yeah, that's different. That's
Yeah.
I get. There's to me a distinction
Right.
of a current sitting representative calling everybody effers.
Right.
And
One
everything
is
else.
one is decorum, and the other really is free speech. Is a free
I
speech
mean, she
issue.
has the right
agree
to
with
free speech. She can say, "I don't like this decision," and give reasons why.
Yep.
And I think there's something. I don't care what she says about that senator,
Right.
but you got to have a certain limit on, or we can't
Oh,
get
I'd
anything
agree for
done.
decorum, and I think that our recourse for that normally is censure for
Censure,
that.
yeah.
But not expulsion.
No, well,
expulsion is something for something that's
I
a
don't
serious
think
agreement.
legally we could have done that anyway, because I think
Then why did we waste
Oh, if we
time
voted
doing
it, we could have.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think
I don't think you can. You
If you
can't
had,
get rid of.
if you had a majority of votes
I
that
don't
voted
know.
for expulsion, they'd be
No,
gone.
because
I don't think so.
I don't
That's
think
the
so.
rules.
No,
That's what the rules say. The rules say that if the House votes a majority, votes in that majority for censure or expulsion, they're gone. That's it.
Censure is not the same as expulsion.
But it's a simple majority.
So you're
going to
leave the people in that district void of a representative,
which
no
is
matter how
right,
bad it may
That's
be.
right. That's exactly what the. I don't agree with that, but that's exactly.
Yeah,
what
but I
the
think
vote would
that
be.
the reasons for expulsion have to be like treason and stuff like that. I don't
It
think.
could be whatever the House decides.
Really? Are you sure?
Look it up in the rules. It's whatever the House decides. It's up to them. And no previous legislature can bind a future legislature, so it's up to them to decide.
Huh.
All it takes is a simple majority, and
That
it's
should be removed from the rules.
well, as you know, we adopt the rules every time we
Right.
we go up there.
I know.
We adopted new rules.
Right.
This time.
Yeah,
we came in.
I think that you should be able to get rid of people, but I think it should be a 2/3 or something so that it's not party. Because if you can just use
Well,
a
it hasn't
sim-
been abused. The last time we expelled anybody was 1913.
What was
so-
that for? Do you know?
Treason.
Right. Okay.
So I mean, we don't. It's not a very common practice, But again, these things about what my criticism here though is that the opposition party, which is most of the media, and the Democrats, we have to include them, I guess, is that you can't. You might not agree with what someone has to say, but you got to defend their right to say it.
Right. I agree
Otherwise,
with
we'll,
that.
we'll have no discourse at all, and that's
Yes.
that's and that's really what we're kind of headed towards right now with President Trump.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, like I said, as far as Frost, I just think decorum dictates that she should snap out of it, because that's child.
Well, you could say the same thing about Representative Oshwald, too, who's going after all the men. Who's just determined
What
that
did
we're all, everybody's misogynist. There's a culture of misogyny and a rape culture.
rape
and all.
culture.
Oh, my God. These are people that are like as bad as Representative Alcieri was talking about killing cops. I mean, every so many years we get these I'm calling whack jobs because that's really what they are.
Right.
They're just out and they just take the position to the extreme absurdity. And that's what happens. She comes and sits in our committee and is...
She does?
Oh, yeah.
Is she in your committee?
No, but she comes and been there for quite a few bills, and a lot of the, when the members of the committee that know that she's that much biased and that do take her opinions accordingly.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is I don't think those two women really understand how much they affect their ability to legislate.
Is there a word for the reverse, the opposite of misogyny?
Yeah, there is.
For men, because I have to put them in that category.
There
These
is.
are just
I
women who just
forgot what
want
it
to
is.
think that every man is guilty of something, and
Right.
it's just a matter of waiting to catch them to do it before we incarcerate
They
them.
did
That's
it.
their
We just got to
attitude.
prove it. We got to find some evidence. It's like
It's all
trying to go after
right.
Trump.
Right, if they're male, they're guilty.
Hey,
We got to
before I forget, the chief of police, Chief Willard, said, this is kind of a public announcement, don't feed the bears or the panhandlers. Same reason, same thing. You don't feed bears because bears will get used to coming to your house and eventually they have to be put down.
We're not supposed to put panhandlers down in
Oh, we're not?
New Hampshire.
Oh, we can't do that?
Can't do that.
We could pass a law.
No.
Anyway, don't. The panhandlers. He was in the article today. He said that in the last 2 years, 24 of the panhandlers have OD'd. Some of them multiple times. So if you're giving money to a panhandler, you're giving him the tools of destruction. 6 of them have died in the last 2 years. Panhandlers. So don't give them money.
And these are from the overdoses and the
Yeah.
fentanyl and heroin.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, actually, we as members of the Criminal Justice Committee, we've been touring some of the prisons, and we saw one of the drug programs that are over in Stratford County. I know it was recently in the news today. However, that program over there, I was very impressed with and did a very good job. And as you know, we just passed in our threat committee the new body screeners to help try to prevent the opioids from being smuggled in, by visitors, which is somehow got into the 3 overdoses that were happening in Stratford yesterday.
You know what they got to start doing, though? And I know this isn't politically correct, but they got to start screening employees of the...
They do screen them randomly. They don't. Right now, as it is, the visitors are being not the visitors. The inmates, as they come back from the visitors, are being screened going in, and they're doing that now with the guards at a random amount. But before, we didn't have the scanners that could actually detect certain things. So we had Representative Burt get in one of the body scanners, and we found that missing key that he hadn't seen in years. So I mean, it really does. It pretty much can. It's much better. Great improvement.
So it actually scans for opiates?
You'd be able to see what's on it. You wouldn't be able to hide something coming
Oh.
in, even X-rays or body. I mean, they find very ingenious ways of getting these things in. We even had the issue with the drone bill where they're flying drones over the same thing and dropping stuff in from a drone. So we prohibited that from 400 feet within the prisons to stop that. And we're doing everything we can to try to keep the contraband down. As you know, they're building the new prison.
There was a company out in western Massachusetts years ago that was working on technology to actually smell particulates.
Yep.
That could actually detect opiates and different things
Yep.
at very, very, very minute, quantities.
Well, if the technology gets to the point where we can use it practically and efficiently with low cost, as we're doing now with the body scanners, then we'd be looking at it.
Right, because even if somebody, I don't know how well that works if somebody's got it internally stored.
Well, we have a few crazy things, internal possession and those type of things, and you can't have too much mouthwash if you're under 18, that type of thing. It's the New Hampshire laws.
Right.
But actually interesting. I did just another ride along with the state police last week, and I try to do that all the time. And it's interesting that, for example, we just passed the decriminalization laws.
Yeah.
And the thing is that almost everyone that we stopped that we had got out of the car had paraphernalia, whether it was a roach or a grinder or something from that too. And if the officers were making arrests, all they'd be doing is driving back and forth to Beach Route. It's untenable the situation they had, and this is even before all the stores and shops open up in Massachusetts with pot. So they have to make some change. Decriminalization was absolutely a must. They had to do. Now we need to make some changes into that law, in regards to bringing us in line with the other states, I think.
What do you mean? What
Well,
are you
for
suggesting?
example, right now, in the 3/4 ounce issue with the Senate, just to appease the chiefs of police, if they had an issue with the bill, they could have shown up at our committee and testified. Yet in the House, there was absolutely not any. There was none, no
Well, that's
opposition
what they
at all
do.
to
A
decriminalization
lot,
bill.
and not to harp on the state police, but that's what the lobbyists
No, it wasn't just
do.
the state police. It wasn't the state police. It was the Chiefs of Police Association.
Chiefs of police. Okay, but
And
that's
instead,
what,
they went to Jeb Bradley in the Senate and tried to hammer the Senate afterwards on those.
that's what the lobbyists do. They wait till they are connected well enough in the Senate, and we've had bills that are just great, and then they go to the Senate and out of the blue.
Now, I've been in this, having been in the Senate,
Yeah.
where things come at you, is that they do focus their pressure on that. And the thing is, even in the Senate, if you don't have a strong enough backbone to fight it, to say, no, this is wrong or whatever, they're never going to leave you alone. The pressure is much greater than you have in the House.
Why don't
Oh,
we
of
get a
course
bill to legalize or allow window tint on the side windows?
I put that in, John. I had that in before, and
There's
at
only
times.
4 states in the United States that don't allow window tint.
Right,
on
and
on the left and right.
We
driver's side.
that's how we punish New Hampshire citizens. Anybody else can have window tint in their cars in
Yeah.
New Hampshire and drive all the way to New Hampshire, except for New Hampshire residents.
Right.
And that bill's been killed every single time.
Right.
In the committee that I'm on now, which I wasn't on
It's
before.
gotta be, and we've got to buy as an inspection station. I've got to, if I want to inspect that vehicle
You did
with
the
window
lights.
tint, I have to buy the tint meter,
Yep.
which is, I don't know, a couple $100, whatever it is for, there aren't enough cars that have it.
See,
But we're one of 4 states out of 50.
I
Wow.
put that bill in, and they claim.
What is wrong?
Well, again, people they don't like change. The more laws on the books, the more busy they can be, and I guess the better job they get.
No, they
I have
listen.
no
They
idea.
listen to the opposition, fight it. That's got to be the biggest problem.
Well, I'd like to try it again. We got a new committee, maybe
Please
it'll go.
do it next.
But of course, then you still
Please
got to
do
deal
it
with the
next.
Senate.
I'll come up and testify as a New Hampshire safety inspection station that
I had a constituent who had me put the bill in because he really had a legitimate doctor's thing for the tint because if
Right.
I got a condition
Right,
of
sure.
eyes and they weren't allowed to, and they put the bill in, and they don't care. They really don't care. So this law enforcement, whatever they wanted, they were pretty much got. But I mean, even when at the public's detriment sometimes. It shouldn't be that way.
no
But
window tint. Just that's a simple one. That would help a lot of people that need the tint on the window, and it doesn't make the car any less safer.
yep,
Any
yep.
less safe.
Hey, what about a bill to say that the New Hampshire will not support a pension over $100,000 annual?
You're going to run into you get ERISA laws, you get some of the things that you got to make sure you clear. Probably
Starting now.
UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, possibly. There's some things you're going to have to. You'd have to
It'd
really
be that
check with legislative
difficult?
services.
You might start from now
Well,
on.
because you're now changing the retirement. You're also changing retirement formulas.
Right.
You've got contracts. I mean, it should. I mean, you shouldn't be able to, double and triple and quadruple dip. And I think we did
Retire
cut
on
out
200,000.
triple dipping.
Right.
But as public servants, but part of that is we just got to control the spending, and some towns just don't.
Towns
Don't care.
Towns can't because
My town put a tax cap in. When I was a taxpayer chairman, we got a supermajority, we made a tax cap.
right. But what I'm getting at is what happens is the people that care about pensions and things like that are like the firemen, the police.
Right.
So they show up at town meetings. Their
Yep.
friends show up, their family shows up, and the taxpayers either don't know that there is a town meeting, but they don't show up in enough numbers to defeat that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened, like in California. I forget what city that was, where the pensions got so ridiculous that it just bled the town dry.
Yep. Well, in
that's
that
what's
case, you got to go to
happening.
the polls. You got to vote in the budget at the polls. That's what we do in our town. We vote on the budget.
Right.
Right.
And, occasionally they do win sometimes. I mean, we had an issue a few years ago where they wanted to have extra police and firemen, and I forget how many millions it was, and something like 6,000 people showed up to vote. And they organized all the supporters who wanted to give the raises to all of them, and there was enough of them, and it passed. Now, 25 years ago, back when the taxpayer group was strong, that wouldn't have happened. But right now, people are just unaware of what these pensions and salaries and benefits and perks are.
It's too hard to keep volunteer groups fighting
It is.
year, and you've got an organized group that is paid to continue to fight.
Oh, yeah.
for
I mean,
it doesn't work.
When I chaired the
You
Dairy
can't-
Taxpayer Association, they also hold grudges for many years, too, they remember, and you have the same opposition. And I always said the third rail of politics, if you're at the state level, is going home and fighting at the local level as well.
Right.
For conservatives, that's a tough battle.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It is, but it is something that's got to be dealt with, because you just can't. When I was growing up, I was in the trades, and there was basically the three kind of tiers of employment. You get a very good college education, you made so much. If you got a good trade, you made so much. And for other folks who didn't want to go to college and wanted a halfway decent living, they were firemen or police officers.
Well, now they're among the highest paid now. You're going to
But
see.
now they're making more than the tradesmen or all the people that pay their taxes.
You know what the highest pension we paid out has been from the presidents of UNH, and they retire on something. I think the 150 to 170,000.
Yeah.
Again, our chief of police is going to retire on almost 200,000. Going to dwarf that.
Right.
It's going to set a record. This is where they're headed now, because we got so much overtime. We
It's
based on
more
the
than
last
the
3
U.S.
years
Senator
retirement.
retires with.
It's a pretty great, sweet deal.
Right.
But again, part of that is because we've allowed that section of government to pretty much run rampant.
Right.
There's so many grant monies. For example, how many federal grant monies get for programs? Operation Grain and Hammer, other things where there's, where you get money from other sources. Once those are there, we get kind of used to it. We got to keep those positions. We got to fund them. We want to keep. So now it goes to the taxpayer,
Right.
who's got to pay for that now that they've already been created, and we see that happen over and over.
Yep.
So
Forever. Right.
Forever.
Yep.
Right. And it only gets more.
It is. So that's why I'm trying to attack it more at the level of, part of it, we as legislators are responsible because we've allowed them to make the laws so that they are now almost self-sustaining.
Right.
Whereas it's not about justice any longer. It's about a business. It's about making money. It's about getting money into the courts and keeping them sustained and allowing them to continue to make the rest so they continue to fine but it's not the fines where they make the money. You may have a fine of maybe $100 or $300. When you have that, you have a penalty assessment that's higher than that because the penalty assessment is where they make the money on.
Right.
I'll tell you something you might not be aware of. We saw this in judiciary a couple of years ago, and was started to try to squash it ever since. Is that the county and municipal? I forget what the jerk's name is. The lobbyist, tall guy, has come in, and what they do. And they do this a lot. If you start being aware of this, you'll notice it. Cordell Johnson.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is they'll say you dripped oil in your yard or something, like you were changing the oil, something happened, and they charge you $1,000 fine, right? You were on vacation, so they charge you again, even though you don't know what happened. They make it. If you read the wording. Each day is a separate violation. That's how it's worded. What that does is, A, that means in the 30 days you were in Alaska, when you get back, you could owe $30,000.
Yep.
A, and B, the real clincher is, it never went over, I think it's $5,000, so you never are required to get a day in court.
Right, because the amount is too low.
It's only $1,000, so you never get to court, and you owe $30,000. It's a scam.
Yep.
And it's the county and municipal government lobbyists and others that do this. And if you start paying attention to it, you'll see it. That simple thing. Every day is a separate violation.
Yep.
And they do that so they can just, if they don't like somebody in town, they can kick them out of their house quicker than you can think about it. I mean, there's
a few
insane.
laws that are kind of manipulative like that. For example, I got contacted by somebody who was going to go to jail for not registering their dog. So and we do
Go
that.
to
So
jail for not registering.
people
a
don't know
dog.
that I put a bill in last time that says that no one can go to jail for not paying the $7 for licensing their dog, and of course it was killed in the
Gotta
committee.
change the, another legislation.
So I've been to the chairman of the committee now and saying, why? No, you have so let me get this straight. I said for a $7 dog license, when you don't collect it, instead you go and issue a summons, file in court, get a warrant for their arrest, send a cop to their to go issue the warrant. You come over the arrest, have a trial now, and this at all over $7. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes
and
sense.
they said it does to them. So okay, so now we found another way to probably attach that to a tax.
What do corporations do? Their job is to make more money. And
Yeah.
that right there creates a ton of revenue for those corporations.
Right,
Police
things-
departments, cities
Yeah.
themselves, towns themselves, they're all incorporated this certain date. I mean, they're all corporations, and a corporation's only duty is to increase revenue for its.
And they do off
for
all these
itself.
little ancillary things. They're all get a piece of the pie to get
and we
their
ought to
money.
change the name of laws to terms of the contract that none of us have really agreed to be in. We just happen to be here. So we should stop using the word law, and we should call everything a term of the contract, because that's in essence what it is.
There are quite a few like that.
When you violate a law, it's not a law. Laws were created by God. It's a term of a contract that we are all in, and none of us necessarily agreed to be in it, but we just happen to be born.
Well, I'm
here.
hoping that with a Republican majority, see, for me, the party differences
won't
are,
help.
the Republicans are party of the individual, and the Democrats are the party of group rights.
I wish.
If there were enough independent rights, that we are not to vote that way, to realize these things and vote independently, I think we.
What we need.
Nobody taught them that.
That's
Right,
actually
that's
true.
right.
Look
We
at
need-
look at the supermajority we had in 2010 to 12.
That's right,
I
with the
keep
big-
bringing that
yep,
up.
yep.
And how
Yeah, we
little
did.
did we really get done? I
Yep.
mean, we did some things. Obviously, I mean that would be a disaster
Yeah.
if we didn't.
We're
But
run-
how
we're
many
out-
things did we really get done? in
We're
12?
out of time. But I agree, we need more people up there that think independently instead of groupthink, or follow people instead of following the Constitution.
Well, you did that with me, and I never forgot that in the speaker's race.
That's, you said
Representative,
you'd
and
get me
you've been-
coffee.
And I would be happy to do that.
See?
You just
I
told
should
me
be
that.
bought coffee.
I'll go.
I'll go.
I'm
Frank, thanks for dressing up.
Oh, pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure being here. Really,
Thanks,
thanks,
Frank.
John.
Great seeing
Oh,
you.
it's
And we'll
as
see you
well,
guys
too.
next week.
And I'll remember it's TV, not radio.